Whew. You guys are mean. So this video is kind of a follow-up video to my video about solder seal connectors. Now, these things for a while were just spammed all over my Facebook feed, my Instagram feed, and I finally had seen enough of the ads that I just decided I had to buy them, give them a shot, and I didn't like them. And I was real honest in my video about them, and I got brutalized in the comments here. Now, because this is a family-friendly channel, I have it set up so any swear words are filtered out and they never get seen by the public. But if you go down through the comments and look at my old video, which I'll have linked down below, I got blasted and I got told that I didn't use the right connectors. I got told I didn't use the right heat sources. And what I did was I took this and I did exactly what the video showed online. So I've taken all this feedback, and one of the things that I noticed in here was somebody had mentioned that the original solder seal connectors are an Irish company. We're an Irish family. So I said, hey, let's give this a second go. So I picked up the original solder seal connectors, and we're gonna give these a shot. We're gonna give these another shot using some different equipment as well. We're going to test them on a multimeter to see if it has the same amount of resistance or better or worse as my soldering rig. We're gonna solder some wires together. So we're gonna give this a whole fair shot, and we're gonna be using a butane heat gun. This thing is what is recommended to use with these. Now, what should be said is if you're using one of these are about 30 bucks and you're gonna need some fuel. A solder station is gonna cost you about the same, so you're not really saving money with these. The whole point of these is convenience. So I also wanna kind of answer the question, is this any more convenient than using a solder rig? So let's get to putting some of these together and see if they work better than our last test. Okay, so for our first test, we're gonna be using a thinner wire, and I've got our solder seal connectors. These are the authentic ones, not the knockoff ones from the previous video. And sleeve it onto the wire. And then you want it so the actual solder is directly over that joint. Now what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna actually use my solder stand to hold everything in place. That way my hands are out of the way. We can get the little torch in there, and we've got the reflector shield in here as well. So let's get this thing fired up. Let's put it on there and see how quick it goes. Now it started to melt there. Let's go up and down the line here, get the rest of it all sealed in. All right, so I can already say that this has worked a whole lot quicker than the last one. Now it could also be what I'm using it with, but something I am noticing if you look at it is that we still, even though we got to the point where we were just starting to actually smoke the insulation on the outside, the solder isn't shiny. And the reason I'm worried about that is it means the solder didn't completely melt. So I don't know how much penetration we got through that. Now, if we were going to be doing with a soldering iron, we would heat from the bottom, solder from the top, and the solder would flow completely through that joint and make a really good connection. I have a video on how to solder with a soldering iron, so if you want to check that out, I'm going to have it linked down below, and I'll have a link somewhere up in the corners up here. But for now, let's take this off. Let's let it cool down. And let's move up to, so this is the thicker wire we're using. It's not extremely thick, but it is a thicker wire. So let's get it together right there. Twist it. And then again, we're going to come in here and get the appropriately sized solder seal connector. Put it over the wire. Get the connection right underneath the solder point. Now we're gonna do the exact same thing. Let's get some heat on it. Now it looks like that center band is starting to melt and compress in there, and it looks like I am getting some solder flow going through the joint. So that is looking pretty promising. After I get the heat off here, I'm gonna try to get the camera real close up so you can see what's going on inside there. But it does appear to me that there is some solder flowing through the joint, and that's a good sign. We do want that. So let's take the heat off. So I'm trying to zoom in the best I can, but you can see that some of the solder has flowed through the strands of copper. So we're gonna now give this thing a resistance test, and then we're gonna solder up some with the soldering iron itself and compare the two and see how the two compare as far as resistance. Then we're gonna cut it open and see how much solder flowed through it compared to the soldering iron. Okay, so for our first test here, we're going to be testing resistance. And what resistance is, the most basic way I can explain it is resistance is friction. So what we're checking is how much resistance or friction, basically, the electricity has going through that joint. Resistance is a bad thing. It can create all sorts of electrical problems. If you've got sensors, it can create misreads in sensors. If you're working on a car, if you're sending a lot of load through it, it can also build up heat and cause problems there. So when we touch these things together, we got that thing to go across there, and the less further it travels across, if that's a word, will tell you how much resistance we have. So the first one we're going to check here is the soldered one. That's looking really good. Now let me change my setting here a little bit. There we go. That's where we want to be reading. So we're going to be reading right there. Now let's check our solder seal. That's really good. There is no detectable difference that I can find here. Now let's try our thicker gauge one. That's our soldered connection. Now let's try our solder seal connection. No change. So far, the non-knockoff solder seal connectors doing good. The next thing I want to check out is I just want to cut one of these open and compare the two of them. So this is our thicker gauge wire. I have a feeling we're going to have an easier time seeing it on this one. So we're going to cut right across the joint right in the middle right there to see how much solder penetration we got. We're going to do the exact same thing with our solder joint. Now here's where I see a difference, and I don't know if this is enough of a difference to make a difference depending upon what you're working on, but I'm going to try to zoom in on this again real close, but it's going to be difficult. That end right there is our soldered end, and we actually had pretty much complete penetration going all the way through it. Comparing that to our solder seal end, we did not get full penetration going through it with the strands of the thicker copper at least. So now there's two more things I want to try. I'm going to get those out of the way, the ones that we've cut up. The first thing I want to try is I want to try soldering one of these together and solder sealing one of them together, and then trying to yank them apart and seeing if there's any more strength to the solder seal versus the regular solder connection. So we're going to do that again with some of the thicker wire. I'm going to get two sections here. Now I want to make sure I get really good solder penetration through the joint here on this one, because I do want to make this a very fair test. I got accused a lot in the last video of not doing a fair test, so I want to make sure we make this test as fair as possible. I can see the solder is turning shiny from here, and I can see that it is flowing through. So that's looking real good. Take that off the stand here. And now we're going to get our traditionally soldered connection done. And I'm going to twist this exactly the same as I did the other one. I want to make sure that we make this completely fair. So exactly the same as I did the other one. 1, 2, 3 twists, just like I did the other one. And now we're going to load it back in here. So now while those are over there cooling off, we're going to get another piece of wire. We're going to take the knockoffs that we used in our last video. We're going to use the high temp heat gun. This is also a full solder station. You can put solder tips on it. So this is a high heat one. We're going to give this thing another chance and use those and see how it turns out with this thing and see if it fares any better. I suspect we had a couple problems going on in the last video. One of them was, as people pointed out, my heat source probably wasn't hot enough, although the heat source that I was using was the heat source that was recommended. And in the spammy videos they put all over your social media feed, they kept showing people doing them with a cigarette lighter. So they just advertised it poorly, and then they gave bad directions, which is going to mislead your average customer into thinking they're junk when maybe they did work. But we're going to give it a shot. So we're going to do this exactly the same as the other ones. 3 twists. 1, 2, 3. Grab one of our connectors out of this one. Load it in there. Let's, just for good measure, recharge our torch. Let's give the knockoff another shot. I can already tell you these knockoff ones, they don't seem to be flowing or melting as quickly as the other ones did. And with that, because I'm having to apply more heat, I'm already starting to get, if you can see that smoke coming off the silicone insulation. So it is requiring a lot more heat. It did do the job. It did melt through, but what I've noticed with these ones is the solder seems to melt at a lower temperature, which gives that a chance to melt before you start burning the silicone or whatever the shrink wrap is. And then the little ends in here, which are supposed to be the little waterproofing ends, smeared all over the place on the knockoff ones. On the authentic ones, they have stayed put, probably giving you a better watertight seal. So the knockoff ones, I'm still not impressed with them like I were in the last video. So far, the authentic ones though, I'm pretty stoked on. We might be doing a full-blown redemption video. So I'm gonna let the knockoff one cool. Something else interesting. The knockoff one is turning much more opaque in color. These ones stayed pretty clear when they cooled. So I don't know if that's an indication of anything, but just a difference. So now, my super unscientific test is I've got my soldered connection, and I'm just gonna give it a hard pull. Mustache power. Nope, nothing. Okay, now I've got my solder seal connection. Nothing. So in my last video, they popped apart real easy. This one actually looks like I started pulling the insulation off the wires, down the wire, but never managed to pull it apart. Obviously, that's a not very scientific test. I don't have weights or scales or anything like that. I just did it on the Ooga Dooga mustache power scale, and they held up and held up. So far, I don't know, I'm pretty impressed. Let's give it a shot now, same thing. These are the ones we did the resistance test on before. Thinner wire. So there's another soldered connection. And I pulled the insulation off the end without breaking the soldered connection. Try the same thing here. Nothing. It's not coming apart at all. I'm pulling the insulation and not pulling on the connection apart. So I'm happy to say that this is something of a redemption video, not a complete redemption video, because the knockoffs are knockoffs. They're knockoffs. Authentic ones are authentic and they work. Now, as far as cost goes, it's really not going to save you any money going this route over soldering. If you watch my soldering video, and I've got a video, that whole link down below, if you watch that one, you can get into soldering for about 25 bucks for a pretty decent setup. If you want a whole rig, I got it off camera over here, that's got, you know, temperature settings and whatnot. Those are going to be about 100. Pack of these connectors are going to cost you 20 bucks, 25 bucks, depending on the size of the pack. One of these is going to cost you about 30, and then those little bottles of butane are about 3. Oh, I pointed the wrong direction. Bottles of butane are about 3. So you're not really going to be saving money. And if you're going to be doing a lot of soldering, like maybe you're going to be doing a lot of stereo installs on cars, you're going to go through a lot of these. So soldering is probably going to be a little bit more cost effective. But if you're having to go out, like maybe mending stuff out in the field and you don't want to be running extension cords, it's a good option. And I'm actually glad I had all those negative comments, because all the negative comments forced me to go try it again and seek out authentic ones. Now I've got links down in the description below to the authentic ones if you want to pick these up. Don't pick these up. Pick up the right ones. And I got a link in there for this, got a link for the description, or in the description for the how to solder video. But it just goes to show you, be careful about what you buy online. And I'm gonna have another video coming up soon about all the issues that we've been having in the YouTube community of fake review videos and fake reviews on Amazon, because it really is becoming a problem and something that everybody really should be aware of. But I really hope this video helped you out. To everybody that gave me constructive criticism comments, thank you. For everybody who was really nasty in the comments, hi. So anyway, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what I screwed up in this video. I'm sure there's something, and I'm sure I'm going to hear about it, because that's what the internet does. And hit that subscribe button, because I got lots of awesome stuff like this coming your way. And of course, thanks for watching. Okay, so for our first test here, we're going to be checking the resistance of the wire. Now how this works, you can see I've got a multimeter. You touch these two together and nothing happens. Because why?